To the Knowful GCSE YouTube channel if you're new. This is the unseen poetry last minute revision night before the exam. So what we're going to be doing in this live is going through the best approach, in my opinion, for actually tackling the question itself. And then what we're going to be doing is actually looking at a full mark example. So I made a really useful document which you should have access to, or I'll give you access to soon, and it's going to have the essay on there and the plan and how to approach it and everything. But let's start by looking at the best approach. Okay, so hello everybody. So we're looking at the golden method for annotating and writing your essay. This method is really good because it doesn't just tell you how you should structure your essay, but it therefore tells you what things you need to look out for specifically in your poem, so you're not lost, because it's often really easy to get lost when it's unseen poetry. Then we'll be looking at annotating a poem and looking at the full mark response. So let's begin by looking at the golden method for unseen poetry. Okay, so this method provides a framework for how you should structure your essay. It ticks every box in the assessment objective and consequently, therefore, tells you how you should annotate the poem so you are not lost. So the first step to this method is looking at the beginning of the poem, the first stanza. So your first portion of your essay, whether it's your first paragraph, it should be dealing with discussing the language devices in the first stanza. The second point is looking at language, and what you're going to do in your second paragraph is find any striking language devices, things that stand out to you in the whole poem, choose wherever you want, and discuss that. Your third paragraph or third point is going to be talking about the title. So it's important that you talk about your title in the middle paragraph, because now what you're going to do is you're going to analyze the title, over-analyze, I would say, to look at every possible interpretation and see whether that links to the actual meaning of the poem, the title, or whether it's completely different and it has different perspectives and multiple different interpretations. Now, don't worry if this doesn't mean anything to you yet, because you'll see how we can go through this with an example poem. Okay, next is form and structure. So this is another paragraph, and this is your fourth paragraph talking about anything to do with form and structure. So rhythm, rhyme, juxtaposition, the type of poem it is, and whether this conforms or subverts to the message of what we've looked at so far, whether the language devices are talking about the same sort of idea as the form and structure devices are. Now, note that there's always, no matter what poem you're given, there's always a sort of transformation that happens from the beginning to the end, and you have to comment on that. And the best way to comment on it is in this fourth paragraph about form and structure. You can talk about the development of specific ideas. And then the final paragraph is just looking at the end of the poem, which is just analysing the devices in the final stanza normally and contrasting that to the initial stanza, to your first paragraph that you made. And therefore, that completes your overall judgment about the poem. What is the poem trying to say, and what is the wider message about the poem? Now, I can see in the chat that a lot of people have their own different interpretations, and if those work for you, those work for you. I'm just giving you an example of how this can actually work in getting you the full marks, and it takes you through everything. So as long as your structure of however you are going to write your essays contains all of these different parts, then you're absolutely fine to do it however you want. Now, let's look at the example poem that we're going to be looking at. Now, this poem is called Abracadabra and it's by Grace Nichols. So let's read it. My mother had more magic in her thumb than the length and breadth of any magician, weaving incredible stories around the dark green senna brew, just to make us slake the ritual Sunday purgative. knowing how to place a cochineal poultice on a feathered forehead, knowing how to measure a bully's symmetry, kneading the narrow panes away. Once my baby sister stuffed a split pea up her nostril. My mother got a crochet needle and gently tried to pry it out. We stood around her like inquisitive Goldings. Suddenly, in surgeon's tone, she ordered, "Pass the black pepper," and patted a little under the dozing nose. My baby sister sneezed, and the rest was history. Okay, so some of you might have seen this poem before, and that's interesting as well. I guess it would have been better if you hadn't seen it, but that's perfectly fine. So looking at just first of all your overall understanding. So this takes you through exactly how you would deal with it in the exam. So you're just given a poem, there's no annotations, and you haven't seen it before, hopefully. So your first step should go through that 5-step method. So the first step, as we said, is looking at the beginning of the poem. So let's now apply that. So step 1 is looking at the beginning. So now we're just focusing on the beginning. So the first stanza. My mother had more magic. There is the alliteration sound of the M sound. Now this could possibly suggest the soothing influence of the mother from the very onset, from birth. And the reason why I'm saying from the onset is because it's the first line. And in the first line, it's already having this sense of soothing and healing. And it's just pleasurable and suggests that the mother's presence in the speaker's life is just that. I also said the length and breadth of any magician. So, the length and breadth, these are these very elongated sounds, length and breadth. Now, this is vital in poetry because anything to do with sound, remember, these poems are going to be performed. And so you always have to make the examiner aware that you're understanding. This poem isn't just read, it's being listened to. So sound is important. It stretches out the mother's capabilities, the length and breadth. And there's a sense of exaggeration, hyperbolic sense. And this suggests that the reader can infer the speaker is quite young. The speaker is exaggerating his or her mother's powers, and it seems very overly more immature and childish to do. Did we reach 10,000 subscribers? That's amazing. Oh, okay. Really? We did. Whenever I say that, it goes down a little bit for some reason, but okay, that's amazing. Okay, thank you for telling me. Yes, so that is the step 1, focusing just on the beginning. Now, step 2 is not on the screen yet. Thank you, Galactical. Thank you, all of you guys. So step 2 is looking at language. Thank you very much. It's been a long time since, I think we started this channel 2 years ago, so it's quite cool that we've got here, 25th of June, I remember. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's continue. So step 2 is language. So you look in the poem and you look anywhere where you see some language device that either you understand or you have a lot to say about. In this case, I found it in, I think, the 3rd and 4th stanza. You don't have to say both points. I'm just showing you examples of 2 different points you can make. Thank you, Salvador. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say was the knowing, needing. So you've got the repetition there, and you've got the prominent KN sound, and this suggests possibly the very natural sense that the mother has. Thank you, Santosh. So very natural skills that the mother has. And another interpretation is the fact that the K is silent in all of those words. And it possibly suggests that the mother's sacrifice and plight is silent and carried out unnoticed. So you've always got to think, what is the bigger message? So in this case, the bigger message could be the fact that the speaker is talking about how mothers work in general. All different mothers, they go unnoticed. Now, that's one language point, but Another possible language point you could speak about is the next stanza where it says, once my baby sister stuffed a split pea up her nostril. So you've got a lot of sibilance, which just means alliteration of the S sound. Now, this is quite uncomfortable in this sense. Could you say the sibilance makes it seem gentle as the baby is young? Yes, you could say that. Now, I've given two different perspectives then. Normally, sibilance is thought of as quite soothing, but I've talked about here, it represents the very disruptive nature of the younger sister, how children generally cause disruption to the lives of mothers due to their over-reliance on the mothers. But yeah, you could definitely say sibilance makes it seem gentle and childish. So you can talk about the two different perspectives. It's really a good idea to speak about that as well. Okay, so that is step 2. Now, step 3 is looking back at the title. So now we're focusing on the title, which is just called Abracadabra. Now, I said it's childish. It's very unspecific to a specific character. You wouldn't think it's about mothers necessarily. And it's quite surreal and magical and immature, which contrasts the very real nature of being a mother. Yes, and that's really all the over-analysis we can do because there's not any exclamatives or grammar. There's not any other words we could talk about. So that's the level of depth you need to speak about. And now we've got to also remember, does the title link with our understanding of the poem so far? So we know that the poem is about appreciating mothers. Does this comply with that so far? Well, you could argue that it's quite vague. It's not really specific, so maybe it doesn't comply, but it could highlight that overall in society there is an underappreciation of mothers, and it shouldn't be childish. Well done, questionable. Yeah, that's perfect, correct. So the title could be related to magical and supernatural, as wizards, are supernatural beings. That's a really valid point. Okay, and then we're moving on to step 4. So step 4 is looking at form and structure. So in this case, obviously you can't actually see the other part that I've cut out, but form and structure is an important paragraph, as I mentioned, because it's talking about the development of the poem. So I spoke about the transition and development of occupations from being a magician to being a surgeon. So this transition here from an occupation that's mystical, unbelievable, and quite rare to a surgeon, which is very mature and realistic. So this transition from occupations kind of highlights the maturation of the character. That she seems to be growing up, and her perspective upon her mother seems to be maturing as well. A Discord community for revision help. Yeah, you can definitely post the link. Yeah. For that. Well done for creating that sports commentary. It's very kind of you. Could you mention the meticulous care and capabilities the mother has, similar to a surgeon? That is spot on. Well done. Some really good analysis there. Thank you for linking my website. Okay. Now, both jobs are amazing, and you can appreciate the sense of talent and high level of skill required for both being a magician and a surgeon. However, as I said, it represents the maturation and the evolving perspective that the speaker has of her mother, and it still recognizes the enormity of the mother's role. Okay. Finally, looking at step 5, which is looking at the ending. So what I've said here is the rest was history. So it's not highlighted here. However, in every stanza, there were 4 lines, there were quatrains. However, there's a break from a quatrain and there's now a couplet. And that's definitely worth noting. Even though it's not a form paragraph, it's definitely worth noting that. Brooke, well done. That's such a lovely thing to say. So the stanzas with the most lines are about the mother, highlighting the significance of motherhood. That is a really acute observation to make. Well done. I'm glad you guys are making your own observations as well. It's really nice. The surgeon could suggest gentleness the mother has for a child. Yeah. Could suddenly illustrate the mother's quick switch of jobs, emphasize the flexibility in many careers. Yep, definitely as well. And how the mother has to juggle doing loads of different jobs under the same sort of title. Okay, so yes, the rest was history. So it breaks this enjambment structure as well, because there's punctuation. So when you have endless lines and then there's no punctuation between lines, that is looking at enjambment. Thank you for the congrats on 10k subs. I appreciate that. In unseen poetry, the examiners don't care if you get the point of the poem. I mean, they kind of want you to get the point of the poem, the overall message. However, if you go on another tangent, but it's valid and it's evidenced, then they're not going to dispute you and you can definitely get the good marks. But you have to understand the point a little. Yeah, I agree. Okay. There's a sense of finality because you've got the alliteration of the ST sound in the rest was history. And this sort of repetitive sound has a sense of finality and it being over, and it's kind of the end of the flashback. The rest was history. Now, the speaker is reducing the whole of her childhood to a single word, history. And that suggests that as us as society literally just recognizes all of mother's work through singular words, and it's not enough. They are underappreciated. Well, that's one thing you can say. Hopefully you guys also, if you've seen my previous live streams, I've spoken about the difference between inferring from the text or implying. So implying is what the speaker is telling you, and inferring is what you are taking from the poem yourself. Do you think unseen poetry is easy to get good marks? I think a lot of people overcomplicate it and people get scared. But if you have a system in place that you practice, you are definitely, and you use this structure, you're going to tick all of the assessment objectives, and then it's not going to be too hard. Okay. So that is going through all of the different parts now. So we've gone through this 5-step method. That is the analysis that I've done. I'm going to link the document. I forgot to put it on the website. So at the end of the live, I'll put the document on the website so you guys can have access to it. And you can use that. So and now what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at writing it. So writing out the full mark response. How many paragraphs do you recommend? I've said the 5-step plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean 5 whole paragraphs, because obviously writing about the title, you're going to be very limited for space. So yeah, it depends on your writing, but 3 is a good sort of estimate for that. Okay, so we're now going to look at the 24 out of 24 response. Someone has how many subscribers? 1.18 million, and here I am getting excited about 10k. Well done. That's really hard to achieve. Okay, I feel honored you're on my YouTube channel. Okay, but let's actually go through the essay now. So I'll share my screen. Yeah, give me a shout out, please. Thank you. And it will be thanks to your hard work as well. Okay, you can't see my screen yet, can you? Here is the response. We're going to go through it in depth and then, yeah, move on to the rest of the literature live streams after this. So we've got our introduction. Now, I never would, like, introductions aren't as important because you don't know any context, so it's not going to get you any marks, but I would sometimes introduce it if you just have some points to make. Do I mention language, structure, and form in each paragraph? You don't necessarily, as long as you mention it across. Oh, thank you for the £10. I value that. Yeah, I think the Uninspector Calls Live is after this. But yeah, okay, let's go through. Okay. So looking at the introduction. In the poem Abracadabra, Nichols explores the almost transcendent and omniscient nature of her mother as a wider platform to exemplify and celebrate the multi-talented role of mothers. So here I just spoke about the overall message of the poem. So I just had a really good understanding of this. For someone asking me, how are you able to think of these ideas? It was luck really because I did this poem when I was doing my GCSEs as practice and I really understood it really well. So that's why, but sometimes I don't understand the poem that they give at all. So then you kind of have to just like work with the words you understand. Thank you. I'm the best free GCSE revision resource out there. I agree. Yeah, we'll be doing love and relationships later as well. Okay, so that's the introduction. Definitely not necessary. Only say an introduction if you understand or you think you have a good understanding of the overall message, but you don't get any marks, so not entirely necessary. So let's look at the first part, which is looking at, as we said, the first part of the poem. So I don't know why there's a full stop here, that's a mistake. In the beginning of the poem, the reader gains a sense that the speaker is enamored and mesmerized by the almost supernaturally depicted powers that her mother possesses. In the first line, so you can see embedded quotes here, my mother has more magic. The alliteration of the M sound is instrumental in setting a pleasing and soothing tone in the poem. Yeah, I don't know if Simon Armitage is actually in the chat or not. I'm getting a bit confused. If he is, I am like shaken. Yeah, okay, he's probably not. Do you have a poetry essay for love and relationships? Yep, I have loads of essays. We'll be going through them in that live stream. How do you suggest I remember all poems in less than 24 hours? Here's the thing, I don't recommend that at all. When I was doing my GCSEs, I didn't memorize a single poem. What I did instead was memorize essay plans, which we'll be going through. I'll be giving you all my grade 9 essay plans. I memorized them and I was absolutely fine. So don't waste your time memorizing the poem. Okay, it's just unessential. Okay. Continuing on, so we've got the alliteration of the M sound is instrumental in setting a pleasing and soothing tone. So what you want to do if you want to like have a good understanding of how to actually speak about it, so you have your quote, and then the next step is talking directly about, okay, what technique has been used in that quote with speaking about alliteration of the M sound. What is the initial impact of that? Well, it sets a pleasing and soothing tone in the poem. And then what could that possibly suggest in the future? What could that possibly suggest in the future? Well, this rhythm could possibly replicate the soothing influence that mothers have through the lens of the speaker and her sister. Okay, so hopefully you can see the stage in which that works. Yep, I will be doing an Anna in Spectacles live. I will be doing Power and Conflict. I just haven't exactly scheduled it yet. I will be going through the essay plans in the video. Okay. The speaker then goes to elaborate lengths to capture this awe that the mother has some magic more than the length and breadth than any professional magician. So now we're talking about our second point. So notice this isn't just random things I'm talking about. It's all from the annotations and analysis of the poem. I would recommend, however, maybe try to write some of your annotations on your actual answer booklet, because the examiners aren't going to see your annotations of the poem, but they are going to see your actual answer booklet. So try and plan it more on there. I can pin the Discord link if you want. However, I can't see it. Where is the Discord link? Okay, so I can pin that. Okay, done. Moving on. Then any professional magician. So the depiction of the extent of the mother's capabilities, further ensured with the lengthy assonant stretched sounds of length and breadth, which aid in conveying the extent of the mother's powers and capabilities. Okay, so it's important that you're giving the examiner the sense of, you're not just saying one point, but you're building on it. So you're saying this furthered with this, which is exemplified by this, etc., etc. Okay. Within the first stanza, Nichols' use of alliteration and assonance means that much of the meanings are delivered through sound. So here we're showing the examiner that we know the importance of sound in poetry, and sensually satisfying to listen to, as the verbal deliverance of the poem would capture this. Through this, important to use phrases like that, because you're showing the examiner, you're considering the actual impact of things. So through this, Nichols purposefully seems to highlight the astonishment she has felt in her mother's presence, which serves as a greater presence of validating the magical nature of mothers. So we're talking about the overall purpose at the end of each paragraph to highlight this sense of continuing line of argument. Okay. The next paragraph and the next point, so we've spoken about the first stanza, so the next part is going to be looking at a language device. The speaker further presents her mother's as an all-knowing and wise woman through the alliteration of knowing and needing. This effect is two-sided, as it not only acts to exemplify the multitude of knowledge that the mothers possess, but perhaps upon deeper inspection, this is a useful phrase to put, so upon deeper inspection, the repetitive use of the silent K sound being read by the readers as the mother's wisdom and teaching. Nursing and sacrifice is to be carried out silently without the need for recognition nor congratulations. So here we're just expanding on the analysis of the poem. Nichols could possibly be suggesting that the care that mothers provide goes unrecognized, and the very purpose of this poem is to battle this. So remember, we're saying possibly because we don't exactly know whether this is their meaning or not. Okay. Continuing on. So the next paragraph, we've spoken one paragraph about the beginning, the next paragraph about language. This next paragraph is speaking a little bit about form and structure. So you can shift the structure that I spoke about, the 5-point structure, that can get you 5 marks. And that can get you 4 marks, sorry. So through the journey of the poem, the poet's standpoint and feelings regarding her mother only seem to become more mature. So what's happening here? And self-aware. So we are recognizing that there's development within the poem. It's not staying the same, it's not stagnant. There is a sense of movement. So through the journey of the poem, her feelings seem to become more mature and self-aware. The progression of the semantic field of occupations surrounding the mother go from being magician in the first stanza, so make sure you're highlighting that you're using structure because you're talking about stanzas. So in the first stanza, and then evolving into surgeon in the penultimate stanza. Okay. This suggests a transition from something unexplainable, i.e., a magician, and mysterious, to something more realistic and measurable. Yet, despite this shift in tone, so here we're really highlighting our knowledge on the different form and structure techniques. If you don't mention structure, it's okay. As someone was asking, as long as you mention form and structure, but if you do want to reach those 4 marks, then I would recommend just including it anyway. So, yet despite this shift in tone through the maturation of the speaker herself, it seems Nichols still comprehends the enormity of a mother's role. Useful language here. Okay, although a surgeon is more realistic, it still requires patience, extreme skillfulness, and wisdom that Nichols seems to suggest all mothers contain. So here we're talking about the wider message of things. Through this inevitable shift in tone, caused by the growing up of the speaker, it separates the immature connotations of the title, being Abracadabra, to truly value and respect the scale and of sacrifice and patience that mothers continue to carry out. So, understanding here that we have now merged 2 of our points together. So even though it's a 5-point plan, we've merged the talking about form and structure to the title. So it's always useful to mention the title in there. Okay, and then we've got our last paragraph, which is going to be about the ending. So the final stanza ends the poem and breaks the continuous enjambment, not enjoyment, enjambment infused form. Yeah, this poem is quite understandable, but some poems are a bit more difficult. So it's important to note that. Into two short sentences. The first line quotes, "The rest was history." This can be inferred to be discussing childhood and solidifies the fact that the speaker is reminiscing upon her childhood looking back. So our understanding of the poem grows. The st consonant sound in the words rest and history possibly provides a sense of finality to the poem as it evaluates how the mother's continuous sacrifice and care for her children through their craft, such like a magician or a surgeon, is often hidden and underappreciated. Okay, so that response got full marks. And I will put it up on the website and I'll link it in the chat. So if you give me a minute, this document is really good. I would recommend you look at it before your exam because it has the structure on there, it has the example, the annotations, and the actual essay. So I'll get that up for you guys. I don't think that's the real Simon Armitage, guys. Yes, I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, I'm going to upload this document on the website. So just give me a second and I can do that. So give me a second. If you have any questions, do let me know. I'm just putting the document on the website so you guys can access that. Yeah, the live is still happening, but it's almost finished. I'm just going to share this document with you, and then we'll move on to the next live, which is Anne in Spectacles. By the way, everybody, if you are attending the Anne in Spectacles live stream, which is in 20 minutes, it's going to be going over the same essay that we looked at in the previous live because not many people attended that one, so I'm just going to recycle that. So if you were there for the previous one, then you don't have to attend this one again. But if you want to benefit from it, then you can. That essay was really good, so it's worth going over that. How do you revise Animal Farm? I'm not too sure. Just pretty much how you revise any text. So go over the quotes, go over essay plans, try and get some really good high-level analysis for your exam. Unfortunately, there aren't many resources, but I'll try and make some. But I guess it wouldn't be in time for your exams, maybe in the future. But Animal Farm is a really good story. Okay, I've posted it on the website now, the English literature document for unseen poetry, but I'll link that on the chat as well so you guys can access it quicker. one sec. So I'm posting the document here. There you go. And that effectively has everything that you need to, or everything that you need to revise from. Okay, so I'm going to end this live here because I'm going to be preparing for the next couple of lives. We're doing Anne and Spectacles, then we're going to be doing love and relationship poems, essay plans, and power and conflict. So see you guys in one of those. And yeah, thank you for joining. Okay, have a good day and tell me how your exam goes.